thank you for joining us. I am your host, Ness Jones, and we are doing another Q&A live with, today we've got the beautiful Kim Silver. She is from Building Bonds, and we're going to be talking about resilience, the number one skill every dog needs. And I think every human as well, Kim. But anyway, before we get into the topic, and I say that, I'll tell you why in a minute, but before we get into the topic, maybe you could just introduce yourself and tell us about what you do and your approach to dogs and training.
Sure, my pleasure. So I'm Kim. I live in Pima County, Arizona, in the US, and I've been dog training for 13 years. My business name is Building Bonds, and that's a very intentional name. For one, I think it's important that there be a bond between a handler and a dog. And I say handler because there's all sorts of caregivers with dogs. You know, there's dogs who don't have homes that are in shelters, dogs who have families, and then there are the people that help care for them. So they're veterinarians, they're groomers, they're dog walkers, other family members, extended family. So my name change for the business was with all of that in mind. And also that I wanted it to be open to multi-species. I happen to love parrots, and I've dabbled a little bit in parrot training, although I don't currently do much of that these days. So I work primarily with behavior modification, with all kinds of behaviors with dogs. But I have a deep passion for puppies and adolescent dogs because I really want to help them navigate that stage of life so that they don't end up as adults with complex behavior issues. And I love this topic today because I find that resilience is the number one skill that every puppy and adolescent dog should have. So,
Yeah. I think with, I don't know if it's the same. Well, I used to volunteer at a rescue, and the age of most of the dogs that were surrendered were adolescents, because we know they kind of hit all those issues, don't we? So yeah,
very
it's really good what you're doing. The reason I was talking about resilience for me is because my dog bit my thumb this morning. It was an accident. He was going for the ball, and I'm clumsy, and how yes, and I wasn't feeling very resilient myself this morning. I might have
well.
screamed and I might have cried. So, but yeah, so tell us what you mean with resilience in dogs. What does that look like, and why is it important?
Well, I think the simplest definition of resilience, because we have to define it first, is the ability to bounce back when enduring some sort of stress. Um, in order to do that, though, you have to have some coping skills, because without coping skills, then you don't know how to bounce back from that stress. And in the case of dogs, it's important to have a support system in place. So the dogs are often attached to humans in these situations, or relying upon them for a lot of things. And so we have to be able to have a social support system in place in order for resilience to take place. So if dogs are sheltered entirely from stress, that's also not a good thing. There needs to be some stress in a dog's life so that they have the ability to learn how to bounce back, because the world is not stress-free as much as we try to make it for our puppies, especially. I think there's always this great care that we take to not stress puppies out. And sometimes that backfires on us because we put them in a bubble. And then when they get outside the bubble, because that's life, life doesn't happen in a bubble, then they experience stress and they really don't know how to handle it, nor does the caregiver really know how to handle it for that particular puppy.
Yeah, and I guess there's that whole eustress as opposed to distress. So
Mhm.
the eustress being good and giving the dog that little bit, as you say, that little bit of stress, but not to the point where they're distressed. Would you say that's kind of the case?
Right. And it's also very unique to each individual. There are some dogs who, might be bothered by the garbage truck going by, and another one would not.
Mm.
And there are some pet parents that are also more understanding of that dog's fear or being uncomfortable in a situation, and then others who just can't understand it because it doesn't seem rational to them. So I think it's really important to understand the individual animal and know what their stressors are.
And it's that individual's perception as well, because just because an event occurs, we might go, why are they upset? Whereas the dog's perception is going to be different. So, what are some of the signs of resilience versus a dog that is struggling?
Mm. Well, I think a dog that's struggling is fairly obvious to most people. But there are also subtle things that I think dogs do that aren't all that obvious. And the major one is avoidance. And, I think that people understand when their dogs cower or rapidly turn away from something, but I don't think people often recognize when they're ignoring something. Like, I don't see the scary thing over there, right? And so a dog who's being resilient in the face of a stressor is going to potentially still engage with the environment. So whether they might be sniffing and exploring or engaging with their person or maybe engaging with another animal, or they might be able to sit quietly with their person. If their person provides them comfort, they might be able to do something like that. But they're able to carry on, right? They're able to, move on to the next moment and not carry that stressful moment with them when they go.
Yeah. So, I guess resilience is important for so many things in a dog's life. Oh, I see a dog behind you.
My Francis. We work very hard on resilience with Francis.
So, yeah, so why does it matter when we're taking a dog out?
Why does resilience matter?
Yeah. Like if we're looking at everyday life, vet visits, new people, dogs,
Hmm.
unexpected things that happen because life happens.
Right. My perspective is that it has an impact on cumulative stress for the dog. So when stress accumulates, then it becomes chronic stress. And when we have chronic stress, then there comes a whole host of issues with that. Medical issues, for one. I mean, dogs who are chronically stressed are more likely to become ill in some way. It can even shorten their lifespan if they're living with chronic stress. Um, so I think that um, guiding our dogs through those moments, the best way that we can muster or have our trainers, help us get through that, then the better off our dogs will be in the long run. Sorry, my dogs have seen something very exciting and they're bolting out of the room.
Yeah, so have you got any insight as to why some dogs are more resilient than other dogs?
Mm, yes. Some of it is learned experience. A lot of it is environment. What kind of environments have they been in? Do they live in? But I think one that um, doesn't get talked about enough is genetics. I think that there are some dogs who are genetically predetermined to be less resilient than other dogs. There've been, there was a study on shelter dogs who were pregnant and, testing the cortisol of the puppies, after they were born, and the cortisol level in the puppies were higher at birth, right? There was a study in rats where they exposed the rats to an odor and then they shocked the rats and then they bred the rats and then they exposed the rat pups to that same odor but didn't shock them. And those rat pups were afraid of that odor. So when we're breeding, we're breeding to pass on survival skills. And so when we have, adult dogs who are procreating, and those dogs are not very resilient, they've had life experiences that have made them struggle, then the likelihood that their offspring are going to be resilient is very low, I think.
Yeah, and unfortunately, there are some unscrupulous breeders out there that don't care what the dog is like in terms of their stress levels or their resilience, and then they are breeding more and more of the same. So that's concerning. But
Mhm.
yeah. And what about the health of the dog? Is that also, do you feel that also impacts their resilience ability?
Right. Yeah, I have two dogs. My beagle, he was having some anal gland issues. And we kept trying to treat it and it kept coming back. And he had always been a very happy-go-lucky, lovely little walker in the neighborhood. And he all of a sudden started to become reactive towards other dogs. And then we treated the anal gland issue successfully. He went through a medical treatment for it where he had to be sedated and his anal glands were flushed out. Probably more information than everybody here wants to know.
Yeah, I don't need to know.
But it was amazing to me that when we went out on our walk after that procedure was done and we saw dogs, he did not bark at the other dogs.
Yeah.
And he just bounced right back seeing the other dogs. He would either sniff or he would check in with me, which checking in with me is what I've always trained him to do. And it was interesting for me to see that play out so clearly with my own dog because I do talk about that a lot with clients. Because when a dog is not feeling well, it's going to impact their behavior. And that level of discomfort might seem mild to the pet parent, but to the dog, it's meaningful.
Oh, totally. I mean, I work with dogs with separation anxiety, and when any of them are having any kind of health episode, and that could be pain, it could be allergies, it could be gastro issues or whatever it is, they don't do as well in the training. It's quite, it can be quite a marked difference between the pair. And I mean, you know yourself, anybody listening to this, when you've got a headache and it's one of those ones and it just won't go away and it's throbbing. I mean, how cranky do you get? It's just, your fuse is this big. So yeah, it makes a lot of sense for sure. For
A
sure.
lot of fun. Yeah.
Yeah. So what about some common myths?
Common myths about resilience.
Yeah. Or why some dogs might struggle more.
Um, I think the one I hear the most is, and I don't know if you hear this in Australia, but that they're a rescue dog, that they're a shelter dog, that they didn't come from a breeder, essentially. And that's the reason why, they are not resilient. Um, I don't necessarily think that that's true because, as we just talked about, I mean, there's learned experience and there's environment, there's genetics, there's health issues, and, there's individual characteristics about that dog. But, I have a dog from a breeder and, she's not all that resilient sometimes. So, I think that that is something that we say that helps us explain the dog's behavior, maybe because their behavior makes us uncomfortable in some way that we can't help them cope with it. We're struggling ourselves with it. So I just don't think that it's accurate.
Yeah. What about so I have a acquaintance, let's say, that is very much it's a dog. It should just do what it's told because it's a dog and um maybe, he just needs to man up, for want of a better way of saying it. It's probably a dog up. I don't know. But anyway, like it just needs to cope with it. It doesn't matter. Like it's a dog. It just has to deal with it. suck it up, baby.
Mhm.
What about that? Would you?
My heart breaks for those dogs. Yeah. It can be hard to convince a human being that a dog has emotions, and that emotions can also change, right? There are things that we can do to help dogs to have better emotions about things that stress them out. So it always breaks my heart to hear a client say that to me. Um, but I feel blessed that I seem to attract the kind of client. Maybe it's because of my business name, Building Bonds. But I seem to attract the type of client that does understand that their dog has emotions. They just don't know what to do with all those emotions, right?
Yeah.
They don't know how to help.
I
Yeah.
would suggest everybody in this room now is understands that dogs have emotions. It's just there's some, let's say, dinosaurs out there still that need some help with that.
Yeah, there's too many dinosaurs though, and they kind of are pervasive in our culture, and especially what we see sometimes on social media. You know, the fast fix solution to a lot of dog issues, and you don't see people talking about dog emotions in those arenas. Yeah.
How anybody can look into the eyes of a dog and not realize there's a soul there and they have emotions is absolutely beyond me.
Mm, I know.
Crazy. Yeah. So, okay, so you've got a dog that's maybe not as resilient and confident as we would like, and I'm assuming resilience and confidence probably go hand in hand in some way. There's some sort of crossover. But so what do we do about that? How do we tackle that?
Yeah. Gosh, there's such a kind of a comprehensive way I look at it. Um, and I try to talk to my clients about this from the moment I meet them, which is giving their dogs agency. And a lot of people don't understand really what agency is. I describe it as the dog having perceived control over their body in relationship to their environment. So they can choose to leave a situation should they need to, that they never feel trapped, that they're able to go towards something, right? As long as it's safe, right? Go towards something that they might be curious about, that they're in control. Because when we take away an animal's control, especially about their physical self, I think that in and of itself can cause stress. And so when you have some sort of environmental, stimulus that is potentially, making something very hard for your dog, making the situation very hard, and they don't have the capacity to get away from that and move, then they're going to feel like they can't win, right? They're stuck, and that is not going to build a resilient dog. And I see this a lot with puppies in that they will be afraid of something novel, and there's always this inclination to say, let me take a cookie and try to lure you over here to check it out. And I always tell people, let's let the puppy navigate this on their own. And 9 times out of 10, the puppy will make their way back over to that novel thing and check it out on their own. And then they realize that's no big deal, right? It's not scary. They might even choose to interact with it, or they might think it's absolutely boring and turn around and move away. But if we force the animal in a physical way, like hold onto their leash and encourage them to go over there and check it out, we've taken away their agency. And that learning opportunity just shifts, it changes. And I find when dogs learn on their own, when they figure things out, those are the things that tend to really stick for them. Those memories tend to last longer, whether I'm just capturing with training, clicker training, or I'm doing something like exposing a dog to something novel. If they're in control and they navigate it on their own, they tend to do much better.
Yeah, yeah, and it makes sense. I mean, yeah, it just yeah, it just makes sense. So what about I know you've got here the P's, you've got three P's. What are they?
PPPs. Predictability, precedence, and patterns. So the way that the brain works, our brain, their brain, is that we're always looking to find some sort of pattern, some familiarity. Because when we have that familiarity, then we can kind of hang our hat on something. So when we give dogs patterns. I'll use my own dog as an example because I think examples help us understand this better. So she started to have some issues with going on the walk in the neighborhood. She was having some sound sensitivity. And so when we resumed walking in the neighborhood, we didn't go very far and we did the same loop every time. And she has very specific triggers, an open garage door or a car idling in a driveway. And when we would go out at the same time every day, a predictable time, predictable route. She got to know because most humans are predictable, at least on a work day. Those same people are idling their cars in the driveway or the garage doors open. And she was able to navigate all of those things because we would just take the same path, the same route. We'd see the same people, the same houses, the same things. She'd hear the same similar sounds. So just by doing that, I've given her some precedents because each time we go, she's done this before and she's seen and heard some of these things before. And there's a physical pattern to what we're doing with doing that loop. And so then the walk starts to become predictable. And so what's predictable has less of a chance of being scary because we know what's coming. The definition of anxiety is kind of, being fearful of what could happen. So if I'm able to build in these PPPs for my dog, then she's able to navigate that so much easier than if I don't provide those things for her. And
Yeah,
I
yeah, go
try
on.
PPPs into everything that I do with dogs because I think that it's just so important for them to navigate situations. And I think it really does help build resilience.
Yeah. So at the beginning of our chat, you mentioned that there needs to be some sort of stress for learning. So when you use that particular example, I guess it's in a sense a low level stress where she can build her confidence as opposed to yeah, we're just going to do this, and it's a more of a high level stress. So she's not building resilience in that sense. Am I saying that right?
Right. And, I also provide her a lot of agency. So when we're walking, sometimes she'll surprise me and she'll get spooked by something like a garage door being open and she will turn around and go the other way. And I just turn around and go with her. And she leads me to where we're going to go. Sometimes it's just a different direction, on the walk. Sometimes she takes me back home. And then I just wait with her to see if she wants to go back out again. I don't ask her verbally, I just wait. And I might feed her some cookies. And then most of the time, she's making the choice, having some agency and some control to then go out and walk again. So she's experienced some mild stress. And I'm calling it mild because I've seen extreme stress with my dog in those situations. So her turning around and wanting to go in a different direction for her under those conditions is mild. So she's experienced some mild stress. She was able to retreat. She was able to recover. She was able to cope with it. And then she was able to make the decision to move on and not take that memory of that open garage door with her on the rest of the walk. And I can tell that she is able to do that by her body language.
Yeah, so you're obviously, you're a dog trainer and you're listening to your dog and her needs, and she's turned around and gone the other way, and you've listened to that. But do you think the average dog guardian, not a trainer, struggles with recognizing what their dog is trying to tell them?
Yes. Yeah. One of the more common things I hear from pet parents, usually people with puppies, is that their dog will stop on the walk and doesn't want to walk anymore. And it frustrates them. And I understand that it frustrates them. They're far from home and they want to get home. They want to, keep going. But I always tell them there's a reason why your dog is doing that. But most people don't understand. They think that their dog is being stubborn. And the two reasons that I often see or either the dog has been scared by something. There's a noise, there's something that they saw, they're feeling uncomfortable, so they freeze up. They decide to stop and kind of wait it out. They're afraid to go any further because they don't know what's ahead, right? There's that lack of predictability. Or there's some pain issue going on where the dog might be uncomfortable. Maybe they have an injury, maybe they have a luxating patella. Maybe they're a growing puppy and we've taken them on too long of a walk and it was too much for them at that stage of their growth and development. So it's really important. I wish there was some mainstream way that every pet parent could learn dog body language without having to hire a dog trainer, because it's really one of the most important critical skills to have as a dog guardian.
Yeah, I agree. I think the other issue though is, unfortunately with our society now, you see it all the time. People walking down the road, they're taking their dog for a walk, but they're not with the dog. They're on their phone and they're like literally walking down the road like that. And so they're not present. And so there's impossible for them to be listening to their dog and what the dog is going through or feeling or what have you.
Right. I try to tell my clients when they're telling me walking stories, and there's conflict between their goal and what's happening. Um, I always ask them, who is this walk for? You know, is
Mm,
it for you? Is it for your dog? Is it for both of you? Right? What's the goal of the walk? What are you hoping to get out of it? And through that, I can usually help the client come to some new decision about what that walk is going to look like. It's either for the dog, and so if it's for the dog, this is what it's going to look like. And if they need their own walk, they can go on their own walk without the dog. And if they want to be on their phone when they do that, they can do that. But when they have their dog, it really needs to be for the dog and paying attention to what the dog's needs are.
yeah, my dogs definitely know when I get on my phone. It's, they shame me because you kind of it's just an awful habit, isn't it? I'll just check, and then my dog's looking at me like I see you. So I always feel guilty. So I really, really try to apply that myself and put the phone away. But yeah. So what about games and enrichment that build coping skills? Because I mean, I feel like, with my own clients, I say, what enrichment do you do with your dog? And it's throwing the ball. And I'm like, yeah, but what problem solving challenges or what mental challenges are we providing for the dog that actually give them a sense of optimism and confidence? Whereas, throwing the ball, playing fetch is a lot of fun for sure, but they're not actually, I don't know, for me, it's not enough. So yeah.
I love shaping games. And I don't know if you want us to explain shaping and what
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Okay, so shaping is when you have a larger goal. So let's say that I want my dog to, jump inside a cardboard box. So I would start a shaping game with my dog with the box, where anytime they looked at the box, I would mark and feed them. So I might use a clicker, I might use a word like yes as a marker to mark the moment in time they look at the box. And I follow with a food reinforcer. And then I build from there. So any interaction with the box, the dog is going to get marked and fed for that. We can do it, free shaping where maybe we don't even have a goal in mind. Who cares if the dog gets inside the box, but all I want the dog to do is interact with the box. So it's novel, it's something my dog hasn't done before, or maybe it is. Maybe I'm skilling up, every session I do with the dog and that box. But trying new things, like I don't know how all of you were parented, but when I was a kid, like I was encouraged to try new things because it would be a learning experience. So it's the same concept with dogs, is that if we um, give them opportunities to interact with environmental things, and it can be something as simple as a cardboard box, it could be a cone, it could be a chair, it could be really anything, a bowl. Then we're encouraging them to explore. We're encouraging them maybe to use their nose, to use their paws. Movement, movement, I think, is such an important part of resilience because oftentimes when my dogs or the dogs that I work with are having a hard time, I move them. So when we can get their body moving, it just changes things. It changes how they're feeling in that moment. They're not stuck in that precise moment when things were hard, and we're able to just physically get them moving along. So anything that we can do with shaping, I think, is important. Can I do a plug for a book that's not written by you or me?
Yeah, absolutely. Of course
There's
you can.
a fantastic book called The Stress Factor in Dogs by Christina Spalding. Christina
Oh,
Spalding
yeah.
is a
She's
certified
great.
applied animal behaviorist. And the whole book is about stress and the science of stress, and she's just written it in such a digestible way. It's a super book. But she talks a lot in that book. There's a whole section in there on how to build resilience as well, by the way. Um, but she talks about utilizing shaping games with dogs. And she says every client that she works with, she does the cardboard box shaping game with because it has such a powerful way to get the dog exploring and building their confidence. Yeah.
It's great. Yeah, no, she's great. I just put the name of it in the chat. Um, what about I forget what I was going to say. Sniffing games, obviously they're good, but I wanted to explore sort of if a dog is where do you sit with the secure attachment theory? Like if you've got the dog's secure with the handler or the dog guardian, they're more able to go and explore, and therefore they're building resilience. And it almost sounds counterproductive or counterintuitive because well, we don't want the dog to be so invested in the dog guardian. But if they do have that connection, then they are more able to, because if that's a safe place to go back to if they're worried about something.
hmm Um, Full disclosure, I have a dog with a separation problem, and another trainer turned me on to a human parenting book on secure attachment. And I read it and just, fell all over myself going, oh my gosh, this makes so much sense to me. And thinking about it in terms of my dog, I think secure attachment is so important because, as I said earlier, having a social support system in place, to do everything on your own all the time is not normal for a social being. And dogs are social beings. If we lived in isolation and didn't have social support in some way, we would be struggling immensely. I think we all saw that during the pandemic, how being isolated was not good for us in many aspects and not good for our dogs. So to have a secure attachment with a person, absolutely, I think exponentially helps them build resilience because you need to feel safe in order to bounce back from stress. And if your person can help you do that, then go for it.
Yeah, absolutely. I concur, and I do mention it in my book too. If anybody, I'm gonna plug my book now.
I did
Please
buy
don't.
it. I just haven't had a chance to read it. I'm so excited to read it.
I do mention secure attachment theory in there though. Let's talk about socialization slash exposure. And guys, if you've got any questions, start typing them in. We're going to continue our conversation, and then at the end we'll go through any questions that arise. But if you've got any now, start typing them so we can easily just go through them. But socialize, I hate the word socialization because it's just so confusing to people, but exposure to events that might be, especially for a puppy, might be a little bit scary, but if we do it in the right way, then we are exactly building confidence. So how does a dog guardian do that, would you say?
Yeah, it's tricky because I do think that some of it is very individualized. I mean, I could have a puppy class of 4 puppies, and I could have, 3 out of the 4 puppies be naturally very social and comfortable around other dogs and people, and then I could have one that is not. So, but I would advise them all in a very similar way, even if I had that one outlier puppy, which is, my recommendation always is to take things slow, to allow your puppy to approach social interactions with other living beings from a distance first, and be gradual with exposure and introductions. And then I also include inanimate objects in that category as well, that our inclination, and part of this is our industry's fault. For a long time, the dog training industry was writing books and teaching trainers to teach their clients that you should expose your dog to as many things as possible. Meet 150 people by the time they're 6 months old, and take them here and there, and somebody who smells like cigarette smoke, and somebody who wears a hat and glasses, and up an elevator and down an escalator, and just all these kind of crazy things that we used to tell people to do. And it just overwhelms our dogs. And often, I'm telling people to socialize their dogs, expose their dogs to the aspects of their life, their lifestyle, the individual family's lifestyle, that is going to be important for them to be happy living with their dog. With that, for every family, it includes the veterinarian. If they're a dog that has to be groomed, the groomer. If they're a dog that's going to be pet sit by somebody, they should have good, healthy relationships with those people. If they have to go stay at someone else's house, if they have to be put in a kennel or a crate or a pen or something like that, like all of these things that, for us humans might seem simple. We're going to grandma's house and you're going to stay the night. And the dog's like, what do you mean? I've never slept anywhere else but, in my mom's bed next to her, and that can cause stress. I mean, I've had clients who've had dogs that refuse to eat the whole time they've been out of town. So it's that exposure to how the dog is going to live their life with you as a member of your family. To me, that's where socialization should really begin. And it starts most of the time in the vet clinic, because they're going to the vet so often, as puppies, getting all the vaccinations and the exams and all of that. And people don't value that. They want to take them out everywhere, to the brewery and to the coffee shop and to the dog park, and places that they're not prepared to go because they don't have any PPPs to get there and cope with it and bounce back from the naturally occurring stress that's going to happen in those places.
And I guess a more robust dog will be able to go, yep, just take it all in its stride. But if a dog, again, comes back, it can come back to genetics or early life exposures. Yeah, it can. Not all dogs can cope with that level of exposure.
And genetics are important, very important. Breed is important, because what dogs have been bred to do has an impact on their sociability sometimes, with people and with other dogs. The golden retriever, for example, is known for being a very friendly, very outgoing personality, across the breed. But there's exceptions to that sometimes too. So, making assumptions about our dogs based on their genetics or breed isn't always the smartest.
Helpful.
Yeah, it's
Mm.
not
Oh,
helpful.
totally.
Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, you could get one litter with completely different personalities.
yeah.
So yeah, it's even,
Well,
yeah.
we run the risk of using the golden retriever as an example again. We run the risk that because the golden retriever is known to have these certain personality characteristics as a breed, then we put the blinders on. We're kind of in the denial that our golden retriever puppy is having a hard time, and we're thrusting them into these situations saying they're going to get it. They're going to get it. They're a golden. They're a puppy. They're going to get it. And all the while the dog is just being overloaded with stress, and it can actually hurt the dog in the long
Yeah.
run.
Yeah. I had years ago, before I knew anything about dog training, I had a Roddy pup and thought I was doing the right thing by going to a well, it was a doggy puppy kindergarten place, but it was mobbed. Like it wasn't a small, four little puppies. It was, I don't know, there must have been 20 of them, all different shapes and sizes. Again, I didn't know anything. So isn't it awful when you look back at what you didn't know and what you did, and you just, that horrible feeling of guilt, it's just horrible. But at the time, in my, my excuses, I didn't know any better. I thought I was doing the right thing. And yeah, it was horrible for him. He hated it. And he was trying to hide under a stool thing to get away from all these puppies.
Mhm.
His brother was there because his brother was adopted by someone that lived close by me, and they were okay together. But the rest of the whole schmozel was just that, they didn't want to know. Well, he in particular didn't want, my dog didn't want to know. And I think that was not good. That was not good exposure for that poor puppy. But yeah, you don't know what you don't know, do you?
Right. Don't know what you don't know.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
how important is sleep and rest for building resilience? I think also that, just as an aside, that a lot of dog guardians don't realize how much sleep dogs need, but
Mhm.
also that they don't necessarily do one big block of sleep. It could be like naps, power naps. I've got Malinois, so I call them power naps. But so
Yeah. Sleep is one of the most important things for all of us, humans and dogs. So much repair happens when we sleep, within our body. And it our brain functioning alone is impacted by our sleep. And so I'm sure everybody here knows what it feels like to be sleep deprived. If you've ever had a baby, right? You've raised an infant, you are sleep deprived, and sometimes you feel like you're going to lose your mind if you are consistently not getting sleep. And so when I look at dogs consistently not getting enough sleep, every once in a while is not going to harm anybody in the long run. But again, it's that chronic issue of not getting enough rest. It just goes back to the whole medical side that I was speaking to earlier. If you're not feeling well, then it's going to impact you. So a lot of people don't know how much their dog sleeps, because the reality is that they're leaving the house and going to a job for hours on end throughout the day, and they don't have a camera on their dog. They don't have a tracker that their dog's wearing and tracking their sleep. They have no idea how much sleep they're getting. They don't know if their dog is sitting there waiting for them with their eyes wide open right by the door until they get home, or barking at the neighbor's dog next door, the entire day, or every hour on the hour. So I think that's important that people figure that out for their own dog, because it does have an impact on how they navigate things, because they're going to be more on edge if they're not getting enough sleep.
yeah, yeah. And again, I mean, we know maybe 14 to 17 hours, depending on the age of the dog and the breed and personality and all that. That's a long time. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, I feel like just this is off topic, but when we talk about medication and, some dogs that are just super vigilant constantly and bouncing off the walls, and then somebody will maybe, because the dog's got generalized anxiety, put the dog on medication and they'll say, oh no, it turned my dog into a zombie. And it's like, well, actually, maybe that is your dog finally getting the correct amount of sleep. And what you thought was normal was actually the abnormal part of it.
My dear friend went through that same exact experience where she put her dog on an SSRI and then she called me complaining that all her dog was doing was sleeping. And I said the same exact thing that you just said. And I said, well, she was vigilant all day long, all the time. I bet you now she's finally getting enough sleep. And she was adamant that no, it was sedating her dog. And I said, why don't you call the veterinarian who prescribed it and have this discussion with them? And she did. And she called me back and she said, you were right. She said, same thing. Yeah, but it's that perception, that you mentioned earlier, they don't know what they don't know. So they don't know what they're seeing when they're seeing their dog actually rest when their dog has been so stressed.
Yeah, yes, exactly. And I think just kind of circling back to what you were saying about pain, my next door neighbor's dog has kind of just looks anxious constantly and a little bit cranky with the other dog, and but just more just sad and hang dog and just not a happy-go-lucky, dog. Figured out that it's a pain issue,
Mm.
and now it's completely different. Happy, bright-eyed. It doesn't look droopy-faced and uncut, like anxious all the time. It's a completely different dog. So it just goes to show, that the physical side of things. And I guess one of the things you would say to your clients is get that vet check.
Yeah, and that's a hard sell sometimes to get them to do it. And then even more challenging when they come back and say the vet didn't find anything.
Yeah, yeah.
I have a dog that we have an enrichment program at my behavior center, where the dogs get dropped off and we do fun things with them. And we have this standard poodle who was coming in with a T model harness. So the type of harness that goes across the dog's chest, and so the material is here at the shoulder. So when the dog moves, it impedes the shoulder movement. And I've known this dog for a long time. She's come to a couple group classes, and then she started to come to our academy for this program. And she was always like on the periphery of the other dogs playing. And it's a small group. We cap it at 4 dogs. And but I could tell she really wanted to play. And she's got some confidence issues, anyway, so one day I said, I'm going to take this harness off of her and put her in one of our harnesses. And I want to see how she does. Blossomed.
Wow.
Like overnight. Her confidence grew. She was playing with the other dogs more freely. I mean, like a different dog, simply from changing that piece of equipment where it wasn't impeding her range of motion. She was uncomfortable.
Yeah, that's crazy, isn't it? That
Mhm.
really is crazy.
Yeah.
Um, so what affordances in plain language, I'm just reading what you write here. What affordances mean in plain language? So how
Yeah.
adjusting the dog's world to meet their needs. Ah, yes. Oh, you just mentioned one, really, the harness.
Yeah. So, making changes that accommodate that dog's, I call them special requests. That dog, that poodle was just kind of screaming, like, I can't have as much fun when I'm wearing this gear, right? I'd feel better if I was either not wearing anything or wearing something different. Um, so other things though, um, the dogs are telling us, but we kind of have to figure out on our own, based on the knowledge that we have, what we can do to accommodate the dog. So for my dog, going back to my example of her not wanting to go on neighborhood walks. So I found an enclosed field we could go to where instead of going on the neighborhood walk, I can take her there and she actually gets to run off leash, which is even better. Is it achieving the goal of conquering the neighborhood walk? No. But it's getting her out for exercise. It's getting her out for sniffing. She is seeing cars. She is seeing people. She's seeing other dogs. So she's having experiences there that actually, in the long run, helped us when we started to go back to attempting to do the neighborhood walks because she was able to generalize some of her experiences there because she had a little bit of precedence with those things that she could then take on the walk. So it's making those accommodations, those affordances for our dogs so that we can meet them where they are, essentially.
Mm. Yeah. Do you have any other examples of that?
Visitors in the home, that's one where a lot of people struggle with their dog's stress level with visitors in the home. So I usually find what's most comfortable with the dog or for the dog. And not necessarily what the pet parent wants.
Yeah.
Because everybody wants that friendly dog, right? When the house guests come over and if that's not the case, then maybe the dog would prefer to be behind a baby gate with some yummy things to lick or chew so that they don't have to interact with the person up close. Or maybe they would prefer to not be in the room at all. They would prefer to be in another room away from the guest. So, figuring that out sometimes is a trial and error, unfortunately, and our dogs do experience some stress while we're trying to figure it out, because they can't tell us what the accommodation is, that they need. But
I think that emphasizes the point about the individuality of the dog, and that just because the neighbor's dog can do XYZ doesn't mean that your dog can.
right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Another thing
Uh,
for
yeah, go
like
on.
leash reactive dogs, because I know that's a pretty common problem that I see in my practice, but not walking the dog is also an affordance. It's an option. It's not the only one, but it's an option that I think a lot of people don't consider, and that they can do things at home that can mimic some aspects of the walk for their dog, like scavenging and sniffing and um, getting some exercise, in the yard. Mental enrichment, so mental games, training games, and things like that that can take the place of the walk, or just walking at off times, when there's fewer people out, fewer dogs out, or field tripping your dog. I often tell my clients to go to strange places like medical plazas at night when they're closed, or churches during the week, cemeteries, all sorts of places where, you're not going to run into, the population of things that scares your dog. So just
Yeah.
making those adjustments that make life easier for them and lower their stress bucket.
Yeah, for sure. And what about, so I imagine with your clients, at least at the beginning, they're a little bit frustrated and you have to try to reframe what's going on for them to
Mhm.
take a more compassionate viewpoint.
Mhm. That's very common. Yeah. I think I see a mixture of people having a lot of compassion for their dog and also feeling very frustrated. And then what comes with that is guilt.
Mm,
It's a common word that I hear from people, frustration
totally.
and guilt. Um, because once we as the professionals start to explain to the client what is happening with their dog, why is their dog behaving this way, and how is it that we can best help them, then all the light bulbs start going off for them and they start saying, "Oh, I've been doing it wrong." Right? I haven't been doing it in a way that's helped my dog. And then they feel badly about that.
Yeah.
And again, we don't know what we don't know, right? And some cases are harder than others. Some are easier than others. Sometimes it's low-hanging fruit, and things progress along nicely, and all of those feelings dissipate. But sometimes they linger, and some cases are really difficult to work through. And that's where I find helping the human to find their resilience is very important, because behavior is not linear for the dog or for the human. So there's often a bit of a roller coaster or some peaks and valleys, some regressions. Some people tend to refer to it as that. Having a dog with a separation problem, the word regression is part of my regular vocabulary. It happens. And it can happen simply because your dog is I'll use the terms trigger stacked. They've had stressor upon stressor, and then you can have a bad session. You can have a bad day because the dog, went to the veterinarian and got their vaccines, and then, had the, stressful event out on the walk or being left home alone or whatever it may be. But that's not the end of the story. That's just one day.
Yeah, yeah. There could be any number of reasons for aggression, not regression, I should say. But also, if they have got trauma in the past, I mean, everybody sitting here knows that sometimes you just wake up and you feel like you're just having a bad day, and it's just part of life. Yeah, so that makes sense. And I guess if you're having a dog with behavioral issues is really, really stressful. And I think it must impact the household a lot. It can cause conflict between, if it's let's just say, use the example of a married couple, maybe one of them is like, let's just get rid of the dog. And the other one's like, no, we can work on this. And then I've had a few clients where the husband has said, well, you sort it out. I don't want anything to do with it. So there's that friction and conflict. So I guess the flow and effect to building your dog's resilience is also going to mean that the household is more resilient, would you say?
Yes. Whenever I encounter conflict within a family about how to approach the training or wanting to approach the training at all, it's sometimes you only get one family member who's showing up for the sessions.
Yeah.
And it can slow us down sometimes. But what I tell all of those people who are experiencing that is you do the work, you get the result, and then you show your family members what you and your dog can now do. Not in a neener, 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 I told you so kind of way, but just displaying, just that
Excuse me.
model, bless you, uh, that living model of the new way to do things. This is the new way we're doing it. And they will see that and hopefully adapt to it, right? They didn't have to do any of the work. They just to get to reap the benefits of it. And that's a conversation for your personal therapist, right? If that's causing conflict, for but in terms of the dog, your goal, or you've reached some success towards the goal, and they will come along for the ride. So it can be more frustrating to try to get somebody to jump on board who doesn't want to. That will really slow down the progress for the dog. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, it's, people have got different ways of approaching how dogs should be dealt with. And it can be, yes, your approach is the same as mine. Get that person working on it, and then they can say, hey, look, this is what could be. Yeah, it's tricky. It's tricky though. So just to kind of wrap up, I mean, obviously small changes, itty bitty steps, you've kind of touched on that. Recognizing that the dog is an individual. Resilience is a skill that can be nurtured, but you need patience, empathy, and science-based training.
Definitely. Yeah. Empathy, I think, is the key there. It's one thing to not have a skill set like training, right? To not know how to train something with a dog. But to not have empathy for the dog experiencing what they're experiencing, it doesn't matter if you know anything about training. If you don't have empathy, how can you really be their support system?
Yeah. I think at least everybody in this room is here because they already have that empathy. I would like to think so. I did. Yeah, go.
people that are here. This is what a wonderful group of people that would show up to talk
Yeah.
about resilience. I think this is so amazing. I'm so glad everybody came.
Yeah, I did actually get a question from a lady called Jenny who is unable to attend. So she's going to watch the replay. And anybody got any questions, please type them now. um, so we don't lose Kim without getting your questions answered. But she has a dog called Ernie, and she said he's sensitive to change. Even the slightest change in his daily routine will unsettle him. So obviously that predictability, he sounds to me like he's needs that predictability. She says, for example, I'm at home a lot with Ernie during the week, just her and him. Sometimes Matt, I guess that's her partner, maybe home during the week. Ad hoc, he works in lawn care, and if the weather is bad, it throws his schedule off and he will be home. So
Mhm.
that's obviously a question mark. Ernie finds it very difficult to settle with both of us in the house. He generally wants to keep an eye on Matt. He will follow Matt almost anywhere he goes, watching him. I feel that Ernie finds it stressful to keep an eye on both of us, even though I keep this routine of a walk and feeding him at the same time. I know he finds it difficult to cope. How can we help him feel more comfortable with a change in his daily routine?
Yeah, that's a tough one. You know, one of the things we did not talk about today was having a safe space, because having a safe space can be helpful in situations just like this, where you train the dog, you teach the dog, you help the dog figure out that if they're in this space, that that's a safe space to be. So rather than following around and having to watch, you know, where everybody is in the house, the dog can be in their safe space under those conditions, or under different conditions too. Um, and then the other thing that we didn't talk about today, you mentioned it briefly on another topic, but medication. So when we can't control the environment, and the dog is immersed in a situation that they don't have good coping skills for, and we're having trouble teaching the coping skills because the dog's stress level is so high, that's where a conversation with a skilled veterinarian with behavior medicine or a veterinary behaviorist might be helpful, as an adjunct, you know, to what you're doing with teaching your dog to have those coping skills.
And I imagine, I mean, she doesn't say what breed or age Ernie is, so we don't have that information, but I imagine poor Ernie's not getting the sleep he needs. You know, maybe at night when they're both there, but during the day he's not having those little power naps that dogs do. We know they do, because when Matt is there, then he's constantly like, where? Well, I can't keep an eye on both of you. Yeah.
Mhm.
Um, and I guess, there are, I know I'm not a dog trainer that says your dog must be on medication, but if a dog's got generalized anxiety, then, it's kind of a kindness because they're living in that fight, flight, freeze, fidget mindset constantly, which is not, as you say, it's not healthy for them. Can learn to, and the thing is what we see. Maybe you've got a young dog and it's living in that state of mind. You may not see those health impacts, the physical health impacts, till the dog's a lot older. So,
Mhm.
but we still have to keep that in the back of our minds. If my dog has got chronic stress, what impacts is it going to have in the future?
Mhm. Very true.
Hmm. So, I'll put your website in the chat for people, but it's www.buildingbondstraining.com. What can people expect to find on there? Can people reach out to you for online consults if they don't live where you in your area?
Yeah. I do offer online consulting, and I also offer an online course that I teach live on Zoom, on behavior adjustment training. I'm a certified behavior adjustment training instructor. BAT is what we call it for short. And the BAT protocol, if folks aren't familiar with it, The BAT protocol is a great way to work with your dog on leash, so out in public, um, and giving your dog lots of agency, choice, and control to navigate their stressors. So, dogs, people, cars, you name it. So I teach a 6-week online course. It's live, so it's lecture, and I show you a lot of video. We do some hands-on leash handling skills. So I teach you how to handle the leash, and I offer that maybe 3 to 4 times a year. I'll probably have one on the calendar for January. We haven't put it on the calendar yet. And then I offer some online courses. You'll find that there, self-paced. I have a dog reactivity online course and a puppy online course. And I don't know if this would interest the Australian folks, but I know you all have venomous snakes over there. And I offer shock-free snake safety, so snake avoidance
Right.
without the use of a shock collar. And I do offer that as online coaching as well.
Right, yeah. Snakes, oh my goodness, they're out now. So we've just come out of winter and there's all these reports on social media and there's photos of these huge snakes.
Mhm.
And my dog, so we've got a retaining wall at the back of my house and I was out there yesterday and my dog heard something and jumped up and was sniffing around. She's not supposed to get up there. She knows she's not. But she's, very clued into smells and noises and things and she got up there and she was sniffing around in this bush and I'm like, oh my God, what if there's a snake up there? Because it could well have been a snake. So I got her off very quickly, but it is scary. Yes. So that's brilliant that you've got that. So yes. Okay. So Kent has a Shih Tzu. While I'm reading this out, Kent, can you maybe just put his age in there as well, and maybe his name. Will sometimes stop on a walk, sit down, and not want to move. I hear what you're saying that my dog may be nervous or in pain or something else, but I can't figure out what his issue is. My response is to wait for up to 5 minutes or so, and then I pick him up and carry him back to the home and maybe try again. Any other suggestions? He's 2 years old. Yeah.
Yeah.
Male.
Yeah. So, picking up is removing that agency, right? And that control. It makes me wonder if there's something, 5 minutes is a long time, right? It makes me wonder if there's something that is scaring him, for one, to make him stop. But I will say that I do know some very strong-willed dogs that desperately want that agency and control. And if you're trying to go right and they want to go left, they stop and say, "No, that's the wrong way, Daddy. We shouldn't go that way." Um, so I would be curious to dig a little bit more about environmentally what's happening there. Uh,
Yeah, like for example, is it the same area or how long into the walk is it the same place? Because if it's in the same area every single time, you might say, well, maybe there's a cat that lives in that area and it could smell the cat, or could be, yeah, and it's only two, so growing pains, perhaps if it's in the same place, if it's only like 1 minute away from the home and then it's 10 minutes away. I guess there's a lot to unpack, isn't there, Kim?
One other suggestion that I'll make, I'm a huge fan of the work of Leslie McDevitt with her pattern games. And so I teach my clients a lot of pattern games. And one of my favorites is 1, 2, 3 walking, which is teaching your dog that when you count out loud and you say the number 3, that you feed them a treat. And so I usually start by training it stationary, and I count backwards. So I start with 3 and I just repeat the number 3 and feed a treat. So I say 3, treat, 3, treat. Do that several times, and then I add the 2, 2, 3, treat, 2, 3, treat, and then 1, 2, 3, feed the treat. And then once the dog is like kind of perking up when you say 3, then I start the movement. I start walking and counting at the same time. I will either feed the dog to their mouth Or for a dog who I want to get moving, I toss it on the ground if it's safe for them to eat off of the ground wherever you are. I toss it on the ground and I have them go chase after it and I make it a fun little game. So I've used this for so many things, but to get a dog kind of moving on a walk, even if they're sniffing in a bush and it's peak snake season, right? And you don't want your dog lingering at a bush, I will count 1, 2, 3, and the dog is boom, moving. I can make my 1, 2, 3 slow. 1, 2, 3, right? So I can get more human steps in, more doggy steps in, as we're moving. So that might be something that you would try teaching to see if that would help. You should play that type of game at home with no leash on, just going around the house, counting to 3, feeding your dog. You can use their meal food if you feed some sort of a kibble as a training treat when you're playing it at home. Because whatever you expect your dog to be able to do out in the world, you need to have it very well rehearsed at home.
Yeah. He says there's same neighborhood, but there's lots of animals in the area, so maybe that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dogs have an incredible sense of smell, um, and he might smell something that you don't.
Yeah, yeah. Totally. April says she has a 2-year-old poodle, another 2-year-old, who used to settle after. Oh, sorry, no, sorry. So Kim says, do you have any specific? April, sorry, I'm going to start again. April's asking about barking. She's got a 2-year-old poodle who used to settle after you acknowledged the barking at neighbors or dogs walking past by saying thank you. But since getting a puppy, we have to lure him away from the window with a treat, often barking at nothing in particular.
Mm. Since getting the puppy,
Yeah, I'm not sure what that means.
I wonder if the puppy is also
But
barking.
April, is there two dogs or one dog? Also, don't forget 2-year-olds, teenagers, more or less, still
And-
going through late adolescence
Mhm.
can be an issue, can't it, Kim?
Um, so I love patterns. So, like I just mentioned, the pattern game of 1, 2, 3. I really appreciate how you used to say thank you, because I used to do.
Oh, it's April. Oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry. So April's one of my clients. So
Oh,
Winston, sorry, April. It's hard to tell with. So Winston's 2-year-old. She's just got a puppy. Right. Okay. Another poodle. Yeah.
I
Called Maxima.
I like creating a loop with dogs. So some sort of a loop of behavior because then it becomes a pattern that the dog picks up really well. So I had a dog that would do something very similar. It wasn't a window, but it would be my door because he could hear the neighbor across the street in his wood shop. So he was a shepherd. He would go to the door and bark, bark, bark. So I would do the same thing. I would say, thank you. And what I did first is I would always go and check it out for him first. That's what I did in the beginning because I'm telling him, I've got this. You don't need to worry about it. So I would do that first and say thank you. And then I'd move all the way across the room where I had a setup, a jar that had his kibble in it. And he worked for his kibble. Some dogs might need something higher value. And then there was a location. Over time, it shifted from his crate to I had these climb platforms, we use in dog training. But I would say thank you and go over there. And I had a snuffle mat in his crate, and I would be dropping kibble into his snuffle mat, basically paying him for letting me know that somebody was outside. And over time, this loop, this pattern of behavior from me, I became very predictable. When that would happen, I would thank him and I would move over there. And then it went from ruff, 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 ruff to ruff. And then he'd look at me like, is she going to, right? To then hearing it and then going, well, I'm going to go over there because when I hear this, treats happen over here. Sometimes I would just turn around and he will have walked over there and be laying there and staring at me like, I heard it, I'm here waiting. And then it got to the point where it just didn't bother him anymore. He'd be laying on the couch and he wouldn't even get up if he heard it.
I had something similar with mine. If there was a noise out the front, and it got to the point, if I was in here doing something, they'd hear the noise and they'd all just come charging in here looking at me like, where's my treat? Yeah.
It's fairly
Um,
simple to do.
Sorry.
It's fairly simple to do. It's just a matter of creating the predictable pattern that the dog
Yeah.
pick up on. Yeah.
And Winston at 2 years old and you got your puppy, he might just be feeling like he needs to be a bit more protective because she's there now. Yeah. That sounds great. I will give that a go. Yeah. I also feed his meals during training, so we'll add this. Yeah. Cool. All right. Any other questions? I have put your website in, but I'll put it again down the bottom here so people can access it. But yeah, no more questions, anybody? Thank you so much, Kim. It's been a pleasure talking to you. Resilience. I mean, we all need to be resilient, don't we? Life is always going to throw challenges at us, whether we're dogs or humans, and it's how we deal with them, I guess. That's so important. Can make all the difference.
Okay. Thank you for having me. This has been so much fun.
Thank you. All right. Thanks, guys.